Live from Anderson Hall on the campus of the University of Nebraska-Lincoln, this is Beyond the Arc, live on KRNU2, streaming worldwide at krnu.unl.edu. Now, here's your host, Tommy Rezach, along with Reed Hunziker and Kellen Hebekin.
Seconds at midcourt. Jenkins gives it to Jenkins for the championship. The national champions with Jenkins hitting the winner at the buzzer.
What a moment, what a week in sports this has been. What a great time of year for sports overall, and congrats to Villanova for being champions of NCAA men's basketball, champions of March Madness. Spectacular moment. We'll unpack that and so much more in this edition of Beyond the Arc. Good morning. Welcome if you're listening live on KRNU2 or on the podcast at youtube.com. So glad you could join us. Tommy Rezach alongside Zach Penrice once again. Lots to get to in the next 90 minutes. This hour alone, we're going to talk Husker baseball coming up at 10:15. We're going to unpack the Connie Yori story with Seth Olson. The Connie Yori resignation, I should say. Seth Olson at the Daily Nebraskan will hopefully join us in studio. Coming up at 10:30, Connor Happer from 93.7 The Ticket joins us to talk spring football again. We recap the college basketball season, and then we wrap it all up with a Masters update, things to watch for this weekend, and some other fun little headlines in between. But, Zach, before we dive into our opening headlines, I don't know, what did you think? Where does that stack up in your favorite sports moments ever? I mean, that's got to be right up there.
No, yeah, I know. It definitely is. I mean, as far as sports moments go, it's kind of hard to rank them. There's just been so many good ones already. But as far as national championship games go, that's one of the best, if not the best, I've ever seen. I mean, it was a great 39 minutes of basketball. And then you talk about those 2 threes at the end. Marcus Page, like a double pump three, practically from his knee, knocked down a three from about NBA range to tie the game at 74. And then you're talking about Chris Jenkins hitting perhaps the most clutch shot in NCAA tournament history to give Villanova the lift that they needed to win the title. And, I mean, what a moment that was. Everyone screaming, all over the country. You see the videos of what happened at Villanova, just people going nuts. I mean, what a great national title game, and what a way to end a great tournament.
Yeah, a couple more radio calls we're going to play later on in the show, but we'll save those for later this hour, so stay tuned for that. And then we're going to ask you, the listeners, those of you that are listening live, what is your favorite championship moment? I know the 2008 Super Bowl ranks up there for me. Auburn, Florida State, college football a couple years ago, that ranks up there for me as far as excitement, as far as how memorable those games were. Seahawks Patriots, that's definitely another one that comes to mind. A couple of, what finals was I thinking of? The one where Allen from the Heat hit that crazy shot from the corner to tie it. That was
in Game 6.
Yeah, yep. Great finals moment as well. So, championship moments, we'll unpack that. But some national headlines to get to as we always start off the show. So why don't we kick it off with opening headlines? Well, the Masters going on in Augusta right now, as many of you are probably aware. The first round in the books today, and they get back underway at noon Central over on CBS. And Jordan Spieth has not missed a beat on the golf course, picking up right where he left off in the first round. After the first day, Spieth has the lead at 6 under par, 2 strokes ahead of Danny Lee and Shane Lowry. Spieth totaled 6 birdies on the day Thursday. Looked pretty good. Spieth was definitely one of the favorites going in. 2015 PGA champion and Vegas odds favorite Jason Day is certainly another favorite in this tournament. Zach, anyone else you're watching for this weekend at the Augusta Nationals?
Well, I do like Jason Day and Jordan Spieth without a doubt. I mean, Joe Spieth won it last year. He's clearly the man to beat this year. I mean, already 6 under in the first day. What a tremendous first day from Jordan Spieth. And then obviously Jason Day, number 1 ranking in the world. Had a tremendous first 15 holes yesterday and then kind of collapsed at the end and ended it at even on the day. So kind of a tough end for him. Another guy I kind of want to watch at this point, it would be Rory McIlroy. I mean, he's always kind of up there in the mix a lot. He's 2 under right now at this point. And then Justin Rose, he's 3 under right now. Doesn't tee off until about 12:50 today. But he's always a guy that's kind of up there in the mix as well. So Justin Rose and like I was saying, Justin Rose and Rory McIlroy, two guys kind of, typical guys to keep an eye out for, but I do like them, especially in the big spotlight of the Masters and Augusta National.
Yeah, Jason Day actually had a chance to tie Spieth for the lead late on Thursday, but Day ended up dropping 5 shots in 3 holes and had to settle for a 72 on the day. And then Rory McIlroy pulled it to within 2 shots of the lead until he had 2 bogeys over the last 3 holes. So yeah, both McIlroy and Day did not have the greatest back 9 yesterday. Looking at the leaderboard, otherwise, Scott Piercy from the U.S., he's tied for 5th at 1 under. Looking at the other part of the scoreboard, actually Scott Piercy is 3 under, beg your pardon. Rory McIlroy right behind him, tied for 9th at 2 under par. Some other notables here. Trying to see where Jason Day is ranking right now. He's quite a ways back. Jimmy Walker from the U.S., he's a shot back. Phil Mickelson, 21st at even. He is at even par after shooting 72 yesterday. And Jason Day, 21st in a tie. He also shot even as well. So, yeah, a couple names. No Tiger Woods at this Masters. I don't think that's quite sunk in yet. A guy also that struggled yesterday, Bubba Watson. He's a past winner of this tournament, tied for near the bottom, just over of. He's right on the border of making the cut at 4 over par, shooting 75 yesterday. So yeah, Bubba Watson kind of in that danger zone. There's a 3-way tie between him, Matt Kuchar, and Arnabin Larry. The few of those guys at 4 over par at nearing the cutoff line, I should say, to make the next round. So round 2 gets underway on CBS today at noon. Again, Jordan Spieth won it last year, and he looks good right now in the lead at 6 under par. And before we move on, let's see what we were talking about. Ernie Els, he 5-putted actually to score a 9 on a par 4 hole number 1. That's the worst hole in Masters history. Tough break for Ernie Els.
No, without a doubt. I mean, especially a guy that's won 4 majors in his career. You hate to see that happen to a guy like him, but I mean, just watching the highlights, he has a 2-foot putt for par on the first hole, so it's pretty much a typical look, and he misses that, then he misses the one on the way back, and then he kind of reevaluates and it's just like, okay, now this is for double bogey now, and then he misses that, and then he tries to just do like a quick little tap in, like you see players do a lot, and then he misses like his one-handed tap in from like extremely close range.
Crazy.
And then he finally gets it in with another one of those, but just a crazy start to see something that happened for that to happen to somebody like that. That's a sextuple bogey on the first hole of the Masters, the worst score ever on the first hole at Augusta National in the Masters.
Yeah, tough way to start out, and Ernie Els was quoted in saying it's tough to rebound when you got snakes in your head, and yeah, that's no question. Feel bad for Ernie Els. But yeah, CBS has coverage all weekend long, noon Central today, 2 Central Saturday, and then it wraps up 1 Central Sunday, all on CBS. Well, the Warriors last night, this was probably the biggest game going on last night. The Warriors defeated the Spurs in Oakland 112-101. The Warriors become only the 2nd team in NBA history to win 70 games in a single season, joining the 95-96 Chicago Bulls. They still have to win their final 3 games to break the 72 regular season win record set by those Bulls. They go at the Grizzlies, at the Spurs, who are undefeated at home this year, and who are 2nd place in the West overall, and then the Warriors host Memphis to end the season next Saturday. The Grizzlies, they're 42-36. They do have a playoff spot locked up in the West, I believe at the 7th spot. They're in the wild card. But Memphis, they've lost 7 of their last 8. So, Zach Penrice, do the Warriors win out and break the regular season win record?
I think they do not. I think they come up 1 short. I think that playing at San Antonio is just going to prove to be too much for them. San Antonio had their number back on March 19th when they defeated them 87-79. How often do you see the Warriors only score 79 points? It's a rarity. But San Antonio, they are a different team when they're at home, just like the Warriors are a different team when they're at home. So I think that without a doubt, that is going to be the Western Conference Finals. And so
yeah,
I think the Spurs are the only team in basketball that have a chance to beat the Warriors in 7 games. So I really like that these teams are playing late in the year, kind of like a little preview to what we're probably going to see in about a month and a half or so in the Western Conference Finals. But I do think that San Antonio will beat them on April 10th. That's this Sunday So I think that the Warriors just come up one win short of that record, and they tie the 95 and 96 Bulls.
Yeah, I'm going to go ahead. I mean, I think that's a fair bet to make. Like I said, the Spurs have kind of had their number. They've been able to beat them convincingly earlier this year. And you mentioned it. Yeah, the Spurs overall they're a different team at home. Same with Golden State. And we kind of saw that. Golden State kind of controlled this game on their home floor. And they looked like themselves. Steph Curry dropped 27 points, hit 3 triples, which is kind of on the lower end for him, but still solid night overall. Klay Thompson, 14 points, Harrison Barnes, 21, and then Draymond Green dropping 18 as well. And then for the Spurs, not a bad night. Kawhi Leonard dropping 23, Aldridge dropping 11, and then Tony Parker with 10, but slow night for Duncan, only 4 points for him. So yeah, the Spurs fall 112 to 101. Now, taking a look at where the standings stack up right now in the NBA, if it will let me, my internet really acting slow right now. But one team I'm certainly watching for in the East is the Celtics, but they would have to take on the Miami Heat in the first round if that is the case. I don't know, Zach, looking at these standings, I know, obviously all the hype is, Spurs, Warriors, Western Conference Finals, which might end up being better than the actual NBA Finals. But what's a team that people need to watch for as we go through this postseason, or getting close to the postseason?
I think the Western Conference is kind of set. I mean, you can make an argument for Oklahoma City, but Oklahoma City is probably going to have to go through San Antonio to even have a shot at the Warriors. So that's kind of a death sentence. A team that's going to have to go through both San Antonio and Golden State just to get to the NBA Finals. So I think looking in the East, clearly not as talented as the West this year, not even close. But I mean, I really like what the Toronto Raptors are doing. I think that the Raptors and the Cavaliers, I mean, it's the easy pick to make, but I really think that will be the Eastern Conference Finals, and I think that'll be a terrific series. I think that will probably go all the way to 7 games. As far as my NBA Finals prediction, I like Cleveland and Golden State rematch. I think that's what's going to happen. And I think the Warriors are going to actually win the NBA Finals in 5 games, and just it won't be very hard for them, in my opinion. I mean, the thing that keeps coming back to me is whether it is Golden State or San Antonio in these that makes it to the NBA Finals, or at any point in this playoffs. Golden State especially, they're the 1 seed, so whoever has to play them is going to have to win at least 1 game in Oakland in the playoffs in order to beat them. That is not easy to do in the regular season, and it's almost impossible to do in the playoffs. So good luck to any team that has to go through the Warriors, because you have to beat them in Oakland if you want to beat them in the series, and that's extremely tough for any team to do.
Yeah, only lost twice all year at Oakland. They were undefeated for the longest time. But yeah, help me out. It was Boston that beat them at home, and then
Boston, and then the Minnesota Timberwolves just got them. So
that's right. That was really unexpected. But yeah, the team I'm watching for in the East is Boston. They've won 7 of their last 9 on a 3-game win streak right now. They won at Golden State back on April 1st, last Friday, went at Los Angeles, got a win, and then they beat New Orleans on Wednesday, and then they played Milwaukee at home tonight. So that's kind of my sleeper in the East. So yeah, we'll see what happens, and we'll continue to follow that as we get closer to the postseason. Well, Denver Broncos head coach, our opening headline this morning. Denver Broncos head coach Gary Kubiak has spoken with free agent quarterback Johnny Manziel. You heard me right, Johnny Manziel as a potential fit for the Broncos. This according to 2 sources connected with the Broncos. Now, before Denver makes any move on Manziel, they want to see how his pending legal issues and potential NFL discipline are resolved. Manziel is still awaiting his case on a potential misdemeanor assault charge with the case involving his ex-girlfriend in Dallas, which at worst could result in a $4,000 fine and a year in jail. Now, there is a new grand jury set to hear the case within 7 to 10 days, that according to ESPN, so we might hear very soon what Johnny Manziel's fate is. But, Zach, big question here is Kubiak out of his mind for even considering Manziel, or should he take a chance on him? I mean, Denver does not have a set franchise quarterback right now. Is it all right to take a chance on Manziel, or is this just playing with fire?
He's playing with fire, and it's ridiculous. I mean, Johnny Manziel at this point, he's not mentally fit to play football. He's not physically fit to play football. I mean, sure, he was playing for the Browns, but he was pretty much a disaster at quarterback for that team, throwing about an intercept for every touchdown he threw 2 interceptions or 3 interceptions. So, I mean, that's basically what it was. So, I mean, he's not the answer in Denver. I don't know what they're possibly thinking. I think that if they already have a guy like Mark Sanchez, you don't need to go get another Mark Sanchez and go get Johnny Manziel, Johnny Manziel does not have the talent that Mark Sanchez does.
Right.
So I mean, I don't even know what the point would be to bring in a guy like Johnny Manziel, who's just had nothing but problems ever since he's come into the NFL. His parents have come out and said that they're worried about him not making it past like his 24th birthday or something.
Wow.
So I mean, I don't know why this guy would even want to, or why any team would want to sign a guy like that, especially a team like the defending world champions, the Denver Broncos.
Yeah, Kubiak and Manziel are both former Texas A&M quarterbacks, so they kind of have that connection. But yeah, just to kind of update you on that Manziel situation, the Dallas Police Department referred a domestic violence case against Manziel to a grand jury in late February, and the grand jury was to consider whether or not to charge the former Browns quarterback on allegations that he attacked his ex-girlfriend. The grand jury ended its term last week without hearing the case, and like I said, a new grand jury is expected to be seated within a week to 10 days. And again, at worst case scenario, Manziel could do a year. I mean, this is a very serious case, misdemeanor assault. You're talking about domestic abuse, very serious situations. But yeah, I was surprised to hear the Broncos reach out to him. I also heard they reached out to Tyrod Taylor of the Bills, which I think is a lot better move. Tyrod Taylor's very talented, but if I'm a Bills fan, I want him to stay in Buffalo for sure. So yeah, we'll see where this goes. But yeah, I'm kind of with you. I think you get you have Sanchez. Go and get Kaepernick, which it sounds more and more likely every day that that's going to happen. So you get those two. And then if I'm Denver, I try to get a quarterback in the first or second round, a new guy, a fresh face, a fresh arm, just so you kind of have a new player, a young player that you can cultivate and just kind of add to that quarterback depth. So if Sanchez or Kaepernick goes down, you have a solid rookie to step in there and make some plays and get some experience. I'm not saying that's going to take you back to the Super Bowl, but I would honestly take a chance on Jared Goff or Connor Cook rather than Johnny Manziel. So, so that's where we'll continue to follow that story. Again, Kubiak, they're not going to make any serious moves until this whole misdemeanor assault charge is dealt with and settled. So, I mean, Manziel, if you're asking me, I don't think Manziel plays in the NFL this coming year. So we'll continue to follow that story and see if anything else comes of that. The Denver Broncos reaching out to Manziel, talking about a contract. Manziel technically a free agent right now. That's going to do it for opening headlines. We'll take a quick break. When we come back, Nebraska baseball. They were playing on the road Wednesday, got the win. Me and Zach were there to call the action, so we'll recap that game. And Northwestern's in town for a 3-game series this weekend. We'll break that all down and see where Nebraska could end up by weekend's end and see if Northwestern will give Nebraska any troubles. That's coming up next. And then Seth Olson will be in studio later this hour to talk about the Connie Yori resignation and Connor Happer from 93.7 The Ticket as well. Don't go anywhere. Beyond the Arc, KRNU2.
From Anderson Hall on UNL campus in downtown Lincoln, Nebraska, this is Beyond the Arc on KRNU2, streaming live at krnu.unl.edu.
Welcome back in. This is Beyond the Arc. I'm Tommy Rezach. Zach Penrice across the studio on this Friday, April the 8th. So glad you could join us live on KRNU2, krnu.unl.edu, or if you're listening on the podcast at youtube.com, thanks for checking us out. So Nebraska baseball in full swing. They've won 17 of their last 20. Little blip on Tuesday, losing to Kansas State in a really, what I described it as a sleepy effort. Not much offense to speak of, but they're at UNO on Wednesday. Myself and Zach were at Warner Park to call the action. Nebraska got the win 11-6, so with that, we kind of dive into this discussion. That was Nebraska's 6th straight win over UNO, and again, 17th in their last 20 games. Pretty odd game overall, Zach, with a plethora of defensive miscues by Omaha, but Nebraska's offense looked like their usual selves, 14 hits and 11 runs. So looking at this team through 29 games now, what's your overall analysis?
You know, they're a different team than they were last year at this point. I mean, they kind of had a similar start, and then they kind of fell apart at this point last year, and their season really slowed down, and just they kind of stalled, and that was about it. So this is a very important part for Nebraska, especially at this point in the season, and they had a really good game, a really good response to only scoring 2 runs on Tuesday night to a Kansas State team that, let's be honest, is not the most talented team around.
0 for 6 in the Big 12, and they were 12-17 overall, so they'd had their problems.
Right, and so Nebraska, who doesn't really lose at Hawks Field, lost at Hawks Field after a very poor performance at the plate. So to have a response where you score 11 runs on 14 hits, and 8 of your 9 starters have 6 at-bats. That's a tremendous night for Nebraska in this offense, and they left 15 runners on base and still scored double-digit runs. That's almost unheard of. I've never seen a team actually leave 15 runners on base
and win,
and they still scored 11 runs and they won handily. So. Nebraska, they didn't score in the first or second, and then they scored in every inning after that. So a very good performance from Nebraska. They kept the pressure on at UNO whenever the Mavericks were threatening. Nebraska would kind of put a little bit more on the gas pedal a little bit more, and they put this game away in a hurry.
Just kick their butt.
Yeah, for sure. And then getting back to that game on Wednesday, Nebraska scored 2 runs off of wild pitches. 2 runs on passed balls, 1 on a 2-out error, and another on a double play. Still, as you mentioned, all 9 Huskers notch a hit and a run Wednesday night against Omaha. And I got to tell you, I don't know if I've ever seen a game where all 9 batters got a hit and scored a run. I mean, that's just great team effort. I certainly have never seen that in college baseball. So, yeah, Wednesday's game certainly a rarity in a lot of ways. So, kind of getting back to this Husker offense, I mean, we've seen such substantial improvement. 30 runs through 29 games compared to only 20. Let me back that up. 30 home runs through 29 games so far this year compared to 22 home runs through 57 games. Now, you could look at all the stats. I mean, the Big Ten Network has done this when they've televised games. Just every offensive stat is significantly up. Stolen bases is another one. I think Nebraska has like 30 or something like that right now, and they had 5 stolen bases on Wednesday against UNO. What has made this Husker offense so much more aggressive this year compared to last?
It's that I really like the depth that they have, and along with that, they're very aggressive. It's a much more aggressive team. I like what they're doing with, especially the guys at the top of the order, and Ryan Bolt and Jake Plotchek. They're letting them be smarter at the plate, be smarter on the base paths, and then a guy that I really like in this lineup is Jake Myers. I mean, and when you place a guy like that, who has the speed, who has power, who can do it all. He's really a very multiple tool player. When you put him like kind of lower in the lineup, down like that 5 or 6 area, puts a really dangerous guy. After you get through the meat of the order, you still have to get through Jake Myers. And I really like. There's a different thing that you see in this lineup in that it doesn't really let up. I mean, you see it in a lot of lineups. Those 7, 8, 9 hitters in a lot of lineups just kind of it kind of slows down when you get to the bottom. Nebraska does that, but nowhere near as much as a lot of other teams. I mean, when you have Taylor Fish down there who has a lot of power, Steven Ravelis, who is good for at least I think 1 hit a night. He gets on base pretty consistently. And then on Wednesday they put Angelo Altavilla down there, who hadn't had a hit in his life coming into that game and had 2 with an RBI and a run scored on Wednesday. So just a confidence booster for him on that night. But yeah, I think the depth of this batting order, and that just there isn't really a break for opposing pitchers in it. So I think that helps Nebraska's offense overall a lot.
And even a guy like Elijah Dilday, who we've seen play, he started 17 games mostly in left field. He's a guy that takes crazy whacks at almost everything that's thrown to him, but he still had a pretty good year. He scored 9 runs off 13 hits, and he's batting .224. So in 17 starts and 58 at bats, that's not too bad. And then as you said, the 9-hole has been clutch this year. Steven Ravelis has hit 4 home runs. Luis Alvarado batting .291 right now, and then Jake Plotchek, who's such a tough out with a slugging percentage of .616 and an on-base percentage right at .500. I mean, again, it's just so much good about this Husker offense as far as numbers. And you have Ben Miller through 29 games still hitting .387. Really unheard of. So now changing to the other side of this team, Nebraska's pitching staff, not great, but not too bad. But the one thing that they've struggled with is giving up walks. The Huskers pitching staff has given up 139 walks, the most in the Big Ten by a long shot. Plus, we've kind of seen it. We got a taste of it Wednesday. The bullpen's kind of been up and down, and the weekend starters have changed quite a bit. By the way, Garrett King starting tonight for the first time in a while. On days where this offense struggles, like Illinois last Friday, like Wichita State about 3 Fridays ago, on days where the offense has the slumps, because in baseball, you're not going to hit .380 all year long. You're going to have your ups and downs. You go through slumps. That's the nature of the game. So when Nebraska's offense hits a kink, like in that K-State game, only bringing across 2 runs, can this pitching staff be good enough to win games when the offense isn't firing, like in a Big Ten tournament or potentially a regional? Like if Nebraska's offense is struggling, does this pitching staff have what it takes to dig them out?
And that's what the question is at this point. I mean, Nebraska's offense is clearly there, but like it is in most sports, offense isn't there every single game like athleticism is or like a pitching core is. So I think that Nebraska's pitching has got to work this thing out, especially their control issues. I mean, it's literally it's as simple as control for this team right now. When they lose games, it's because they walk seven guys or more in a game. When they win games, it's because they walk 4 or 5 tops. I mean, it's the control. I think that's the easiest number to look at as far as the difference in these games is balls and strikes, literally for this Nebraska pitching staff. So I think guys like Derek Burkhamper, who needs to be Nebraska's horse, he pretty much needs to be their ace at the top, and he hasn't really been that the last week or so. He's got to really work on his control, and he'll probably have another opportunity to do that this weekend. And I like that they're starting Garrett King tonight. Only he has 11 walks this season, so the bright spot is, Tommy, there's a lot of time to work this thing out. They're only halfway through the season, but they do have a lot of very good opponents coming up. Michigan's coming up. Michigan State's coming up. So sooner rather than later, they work this thing out, but they do have time to work the kinks out before they get deeper into May and hopefully into June.
And two really impressive numbers in this pitching staff are the relievers in Reese Edens and Chad Linsman, both two young men. I think Edens the sophomore and Linsman the freshman. Edens .57 ERA, that's the lowest in the Big Ten, 13 appearances, nearly 32 innings pitched, and he's got 15 strikeouts. And then Chad Linsman, saw him come in as relief against UNO, 1.31 ERA, 13 appearances, 5 saves. That's near the top in the Big Ten. That's the most on this pitching staff. And he's pitched 20 2/3 and tossed 16 strikeouts. So those two have been dominant in the reliever spot. I mean, losing Josh Rader last year, I thought that was a big loss, but those two young men have really stepped up in the reliever, in the closer spot, I should say. So really encouraging to see that. And you talk about control. In Nebraska's past 2 Friday games, Wichita State, which was the 18th of March, and then Illinois last Friday, Nebraska gave up 17 walks against the Shockers in that 17-5 loss. And then they lost to Illinois. The final score is escaping me, but they lost to Illinois, giving up 12 walks last Friday. So, 29 total walks combined in the last 2 Friday home openers. So if you're Nebraska and you're a fan going to this game tonight, you're a little bit wary. Like, is this team going to throw strikes? Are they going to have control? Are they going to win a Friday opener? Because the last 2 have not gone very well. All right, finally, looking at this weekend series with Northwestern, the Wildcats, they've certainly struggled this year, coming in at 7-22 overall, 1-5 in the Big Ten. They've lost 8 of their last 10. Swept by Michigan last weekend, got beat 7-0 by the University of Illinois Chicago Tuesday, and they come in on a 4-game losing skid. This seems like a series Nebraska should be able to sweep on their home field. With that being said, what does Nebraska need to do to stay out of trouble and not get any surprises from this Northwestern team?
Well, like you said, the story of the last 2 Friday games that they've had has been control, way too many walks. So I think just throwing strikes to this team, trusting your defense, letting the Nebraska bats do what they do. And I think Nebraska should get the sweep this weekend. I mean, if they struggle to do that, then Nebraska's going to struggle as a team. If they can't throw strikes, then they're going to walk a lot of guys, and Northwestern's going to score runs that they should not be scoring. I mean, Illinois on last Friday's game, the 6-4 loss that Nebraska had, I think about 4 of those runs were because of walks, and it was just they didn't have a hit for the first 2 innings, and they scored 2 runs in the first 2 innings.
Crazy.
So they did not have a hit while scoring 2 runs. So that's just the story of the game, and Nebraska lost by 2. So that's the story of the game. So I think that these 3 games are very important for Nebraska, especially because, Tommy, Nebraska only plays 6 of their next 19 games at home. So I think that this is a very important time of year, especially with Creighton coming up, with the series at Michigan coming up. Like I said, it's just this weekend versus Northwestern, and then 2 weekends from now when they play Nicholas State at home. But between then and now, they don't play. They only play 6 more home games before May 11th. So they only play 6 home games this month. So it's a very important time for this baseball team. It's kind of getting down to crunch time as far as are they for real? Are they going to try and make a run in the Big Ten tournament? Make a run maybe into the NCAA tournament? We'll see. So This is a very important time of year, especially these home games, especially against teams you should beat. It's a very important time for this baseball team.
According to projections on D1Baseball.com, I heard this on Sports Nightly last night on the Husker Sports Network. Nebraska is in the last 4 in category right now, so they're certainly on the bubble, certainly in the discussion for NCAA postseason play. So yeah, weekend series with Northwestern. They go on the road to Creighton Tuesday. Weekend series at Michigan. Michigan's very, very good right now, top 3 in the Big Ten. Rematch with K-State in Manhattan. And then, yeah, home series with Nicholls State, 22nd through the 24th. Back at Creighton on the 26th. They play KU at Coffin, which will be just a really cool game overall. Road series at Rutgers, road series at Michigan State. Michigan State atop the Big Ten standings right now. So, and then, yeah, they end the regular season with home games, a home game against UNO, 3-game series with Penn State, 3-game series with the Hoosiers. As we've seen in the past, Indiana always tough to get by, usually a pretty solid baseball program. So looking at Northwestern as a team, they only bat .267, 7th in the Big Ten. Nebraska's batting .302. So Nebraska, in every offensive facet, considerably better. Northwestern about middle of the road. So they're not terrible offensively, but yeah, just kind of average as far as Big Ten numbers go. Pitching staff, not good. 6.26 ERA as a team that's dead last in the conference. They have a .958 fielding percentage. That's 12th in the Big Ten. They've also committed 46 fielding errors this season. That's the second most in the conference. Home runs, Nebraska has 30. Northwestern has 9. So this isn't a team that's going to be blasting it out of the park. And also, Northwestern batters have struck out 239 times. It's most in the Big Ten. This is a team that's really had their struggles this year. One player to watch out for, though, junior outfielder Matt Hopfner, .374 average. That's 11th best in the Big Ten, first on the team. He's hit 9 doubles and a team-high 40 hits, and that's 6th in the Big Ten. So one of the Big Ten's better hitters in the meat of the Northwestern lineup in Matt Hopfner. And starting on the mound for them tonight for Northwestern, senior left-handed pitcher Reed Mason. It'll be his 8th start, 2-1 record, 4.28 ERA, and he has a team-high 25 strikeouts. So Reed Mason, decent stuff. We'll see how he fares on the mound tonight. And then Garrett King starting for the Big Red. His 5th start of the year, he has a 3-1 record, 5.19 ERA, 15 strikeouts, and 11 walks. Those 11 walks, the second most on the team. And you Husker baseball fans know he struggled early in the year, particularly College of Charleston and Long Beach State. Started a couple Friday games. Didn't last long, so we'll see how long that Ted Silva and Darren Erstad keep him out on the mound tonight. So, yeah, that's a cap on the Nebraska baseball. 6:30 tonight, 2:05 Saturday, 1:05 on Sunday. 3-game series at Haymarket Park. I wish I could tell you if KRNU has coverage or not. I'd have to ask Rick Alloway next door about that. But should be a great series. Get out there. It's going to be a nice weekend weather-wise to see Husker baseball. So that is a cap on that. Nebraska 20-9 trying to sweep Northwestern. We'll take a quick break. When we come back, Connor Happer of 93.7 The Ticket. He will join us on the Nothing But Net hotline to discuss spring football topics, only 8 days away from the scrimmage. And then after that, Seth Olson from the Daily Nebraska, and he will join us in studio to talk about Connie Yori's resignation. So all that and more coming up next. Beyond the Arc, KRNU2.
You're listening to Beyond the Arc on KRNU2, Lincoln, Nebraska.
Welcome back into Beyond the Arc on KRNU2. Also on the podcast at youtube.com, where you can find us. Also on Facebook, search Beyond the Arc, and on Twitter at Beyond_Arc. If you ever want to voice your thoughts on Twitter, you can always send us a tweet at Beyond_Arc. But it is our great pleasure to welcome back our Nebraska football insider from 93.7 The Ticket. He was on the show last week to talk spring ball, and as we're nearing the spring game, only 1 week away, it's our pleasure to bring back from 93.7 The Ticket and KRNU and co-JMC alum, Connor Happer joins us live on the Beyond the Arc Nothing But Net hotline. Connor, how you doing this morning?
Hey, good guys. How are you?
Doing well. Glad you could be with us again. So let's dive into our topics here. So Nebraska back on the field yesterday for their 11th spring practice. Offensive coordinator Danny Langsdorf was the guy to talk to the media afterward. And yeah, not a whole lot to say, but one thing he did touch on right away was his offensive line. He kind of praised how physical they've been, how athletic they've been, name-dropping Tanner Farmer and Dylan Utter. So with that offensive line, from what you've been seeing, obviously there's a few question marks on that position with Alex Lewis leaving the team, graduating. So in your mind, who have been the big stars so far this spring on that offensive line for Nebraska?
Yeah, well, obviously you lose Lewis and you lose Reeves up front there, so there are holes in the offensive line. But I think overall they feel relatively confident about where they're at right now. And I'll tell you what, that left side of the line looks really good. They moved Nick Gates over, so he's going to be the left tackle. He'll be the blindside tackle this season. And he's pretty much going to be a mainstay there for the rest of his career. They really like him there. Mike Cavanaugh praises his attitude toward the game pretty much every time we talk to him. And then also on that left side, you'll see Gerald Foster, who's a guy that we've been waiting for.
Right.
He'll be the left guard this year, I think, for the most part. So like I said, he's a guy that we've kind of been waiting on. He's told us that he necessarily didn't have it all together in the head last year, and Mike Cavanaugh's proud of the way he's put it together this year. So I look for him to break out this year, and then it'll be interesting to see what happens at center. It's looked like Dylan Utter has been the guy all spring at center, but we have to keep in mind Paul Thurston, who is missing a good portion of the middle of the week practices because of class. So he's out there on Saturdays, and when he gets out there on Saturdays, a lot of times he is the center, and then they are able to move Utter back to that right guard position. So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out. And then you got David Neville at right tackle, and then Farmer's a guy who they've been working in at the other guard position too. And all those guys, the one thing they have in common is the mean streak, and that's definitely what Mike Cavanaugh wants to see, the attitude back with that offensive line.
Yeah, and Alex Lewis certainly brought that with him as a senior, maybe a little bit too much sometimes, like in the Miami game. But, yeah, that mean streak, definitely what they want. And Paul Thurston's a guy who's gotten some playing time. He's come in for injured players, and, yeah, I've heard nothing but good things about him dating back to last fall. So, yeah, we'll see how that race stacks up. One position on the offense that's been competitive this spring, maybe not talked about as much, is the tight end spot. Seems like Nebraska has some pretty good options here with Ethan Carter coming back, and then Trey Foster and Sam Cotton, certainly two guys who, Cotton, what is he now, a senior, and Trey Foster coming back for his second year. So certainly some good competition on that tight end spot.
Yeah, no doubt about it. It's clear right now that Ethan Carter is the biggest weapon.
Yeah.
And guys, he's underrated as far as like what he can do for this offense. As a whole, he's a huge weapon for this offense to have. He's got plenty of NFL potential for next season. I would definitely keep an eye on that. So you'll have him, and that's great. And then you'll have Sam Cotton as the other tight end. And then some guys that they've been talking about, as you mentioned, the guy Trey Foster. He's been, not what we've expected from Trey Foster, about what we've seen from Trey Foster. And then another guy that's kind of come out a little bit out of nowhere is Tyler Hoppus. Danny Langsdorff kind of touched on him a little bit yesterday. They like what he can do in the passing game. He's athletic, and you might end up seeing him on the field a little bit come this fall as well.
Yeah, very, very good stuff there. A bit of depth at that tight end spot, and we saw that position get pretty involved last season. Connor Happer from 93.7 The Ticket is our guest this morning on Beyond the Arc. Another big story, final offensive topic, and then we'll move into some defense. Tommy Armstrong spoke really first time all spring, broke the silence yesterday. What did he have to say to the media?
It was interesting. Well, I think it was the second time, but it's been a while.
Yeah.
So we asked him about, what does it look like? What does the offense look like right now? What's the offensive identity? And I think that's kind of one of the bigger questions with this team. What's it going to look like? What is the offensive identity? And Tommy Armstrong's first response was, I don't know, tough to say right now. So it was kind of an interesting answer from Tommy Armstrong, and I think that's probably something that people are going to latch onto and say, well, that's a little bit scary if the quarterback doesn't exactly know what the offense is going to look like. But I don't know what else we can expect at this point. It's an offense that wants to be able to do both and wants to be able to do both well, running and pass.
Mm-hmm.
You obviously have to be better at the run than what you did last year if you're the Nebraska offense. They got themselves into a position where they just had to rely a little bit too much on Tommy Armstrong and allow him. And really what you want to do is, in my opinion, just take some responsibility out of that guy's hand and put it maybe in the hands of some playmaking running backs, or if your offensive line can block that well, or make the decisions easier for Tommy Armstrong, make him have better throws. So that was kind of an interesting deal yesterday. He didn't necessarily have a grasp on what the offense will look like come fall. And that's a big question. I don't know if any of us do yet.
Yeah, that is kind of concerning, and obviously people want that identity to be, the nose to the grindstone, run the football, and only make Tommy throw it 20 times a game. And obviously people want Tommy to be involved in that running game. That's kind of part of the reason he was brought to Nebraska with his good running abilities. So turning to some defensive topics now, Mark Banker was the guy to talk off after Tuesday's practice. Didn't speak for all that long. It was kind of one of those routine, average, grind, mid-spring practices, but kind of from what Banker was saying. But one thing he did talk about was the play of Freedom Akinmoladun at that defensive end spot. Obviously, he was exciting in the early part of the year, getting some sacks. And then Banker said he's kind of has a better feel for the position overall. I know he was hurt for a good part of last year. We didn't get to see him late in the season. But have you noticed a difference at all in Freedom's play between last year and the spring?
It's kind of becoming clear to me that the entire defensive line as a whole has really latched on to John Perella and what he's doing. He's quite obviously doing a good job at motivating these guys. I'm not saying that motivation was a big issue last year as far as the defensive line, but there really seems to be quite a bond there between the defensive line and what John Perella is saying to him, and he's adding a couple tools here and there as well, so they like him. But as far as Freedom goes, what they really want him to do is he was more of a third down guy. You could rely on him to maybe get to the quarterback in a obvious passing situation. They want to make him a real a 3-down player, all the down player, not just the third down. So that's what they're looking to get out of him, a little bit more consistency. Like you said, he was injured last year, so it's hard to hold a lot of it against him. But Freedom has come out this spring. He's felt good, and he's liked how he's performed. And I don't know what else you could say about that. They need it. They need some more production out of a defensive end, out of a pass rush. That's one of the main problems with the defense from last year.
Yeah, glad you said that. Yeah, I was going to say one big question was offensive identity. The second was pass rush. I mean, and you saw it in games where, I always go back to that Michigan State game. Even though it was a win, Nebraska did not touch Connor Cook all night, and that's kind of why he had the night he did. He passed the ball extremely well and almost did cost Nebraska the game, and you saw it against teams like Southern Miss, where quarterbacks like his name is escaping me right now, but these mid-major... Yeah, Nick Mullins, thanks. And then Clements from South Alabama. These mid-major quarterbacks would have career days, and a big part of that could be drawn back to no pass rush. So, yeah, we'll see how Freedom and the rest of the defensive line fares in that category as we move ahead. Turning now to recruiting, obviously this is a big story this week. We talked about him last week, but now Nebraska got him. Top quarterback prospect for 2017 out of Calabasas, kind of the promised land for Nebraska right now, Tristan Gebbia. Made it public Monday. 8th-ranked pro-style quarterback in the country. #1 quarterback out of California. So now Gebbia, Keyshawn Johnson Jr., you got Markel Dismuke already committed. Nebraska also looking at 5-star cornerback Darnay Holmes, also from Calabasas. Talked about it last week, but Keyshawn Johnson Jr.'s recruitment may have created a legitimate streamline from Nebraska and from Nebraska to Calabasas in that state of California. It's really starting to pay dividends right now, and obviously Gebbia's commitment might be the start of something big here.
Yeah, that absolutely opens the door to, and really, guys, we're not even talking about just Calabasas. We're talking about nationwide.
Yeah.
What that does with Keyshawn Johnson Jr., I've never seen a guy who has been able, well, first of all, has, I guess, been so active on Twitter, just actively recruiting people, not just Darnay Holmes from his high school, obviously, not just Tristan Gebbia from his high school, but guys from all around the country that he wants to, come join the revolution or whatever he's referring to it. And so I've never quite seen a guy who is really taking that much pride in peer recruiting. And Tristan Gebbia, he's just another add-on. I'm not saying that he's an add-on, but he might even end up being a bigger prospect as far as that goes. But I mean, as far as peer recruiting goes, Keyshawn Johnson Jr. is the key cog that you need to have, and that is going to pay dividends nationwide. And there's no telling how high this class could go.
Yeah.
I've talked to recruiting guys over the past couple of weeks, and before, this class can go top 15, and that would spring some optimism within the program, no doubt about it.
Yeah, I mean, and Darnay Holmes, from what I've heard, it sounds like Stanford's the most likely destination. But yeah, that'd be the first 5-star in a decade since Marlon Lucky. So yeah, this recruiting class, definitely a chance to make history. One last question here for Connor Happer from 93.7 The Ticket, our guest on Beyond the Arc. So kind of the big question on everyone's mind is, and you kind of referenced it a little bit, but you look at the quarterback spot in the future with Tommy Armstrong, this being his last year. So how does this commitment affect the depth of the quarterback spot in the future? Because you have O'Brien, which a lot of people thought he's our golden boy, but now you got Tristan Gebbia, who will be on campus within the next couple of years. How does this? How does the future of Nebraska's quarterback spot look now with Tristan's commitment?
Yeah, I kind of asked myself that question. Does it even affect Patrick O'Brien's, whether he plays at all this year? I don't know. They might be a little bit more liberal with that this year. I'm not sure. But the recruiting people that I've talked to said it really doesn't have that much of an effect on what happens this year. But I can't wait to see the quarterback battle in 2017 with Patrick O'Brien, Tanner Lee, and then will you have Gebbia as a true freshman? You would expect they get the redshirt then. But it seems like, and this is probably pulling the gun a little bit too early, but it seems like Nebraska can be a place where you could pump out quarterbacks to the NFL like on a consistent basis. And the reason I say that is because we haven't seen in a long time a quarterback and then a backup quarterback and then maybe even a quarterback behind him that are all like legit prospects.
Right.
For the last 8 years, it's been Caleb Martinez and then enter backup quarterback that's pretty much worthless here, and Tommy Armstrong and then Riker Fife or whoever it may be at the backup quarterback. But we're talking about 2 4-stars at the top, and then another guy with Tanner Lee who has NFL potential as well. He comes over from Tulane. I know the stats didn't show it, but he's got that NFL potential as well. So the quarterback position is so bright, and that's what you need to have. You don't want just one guy, so you're stuck with one guy for every 4 years. If one of them transfers, then so be it, but that's part of the game that you get into when you start recruiting well. Yeah,
and you talked about quarterback spot the last 8 years. Yeah, it's certainly a step up from the Cody Green, Zach Lee days back in 2009.
Yeah.
So yeah, definitely an exciting time for recruiting, exciting time in Lincoln, and a little bit of spring football buzz going around with the spring game only 1 week away. Spring game is one of my favorite days of the year. It doesn't really mean a lot. It's a big teaser, but just a overall great day to just take in some football and make some way too optimistic predictions for the fall. Connor Happer, thanks for joining us again this week. Always good to hear from you, and maybe we'll recap the spring game here in a couple of weeks.
All right, no problem, guys. Anytime.
All right, thank you, man. Connor Happer, 93.7 The Ticket, our guest this morning on Beyond the Arc on the Nothing But Net hotline. And Zach, before we get to break and bring Seth on, I guess I'd just like to hear your reaction. Tristan Gebbia, we kind of knew it was coming a little bit. It was between us and his dad's alma mater in Ole Miss, but he chooses Nebraska. A pretty exciting commitment this week.
Oh yeah, it's a huge commitment for Nebraska, especially to get a guy like that, especially when you already have a guy like Patrick O'Brien waiting in the wings and having another quarterback to like you guys were talking about, making a quarterback battle coming a year or two away. There's going to be a very good quarterback battle in spring practice in Lincoln, so that's something definitely to look forward to. But I think that a lot of this has to do with Keyshawn Johnson Jr. being,
for sure.
I mean, one of the best peer recruiters I think that Nebraska's ever recruited. I mean, when they get him, that's a big name, regardless of whether Keyshawn Johnson Jr. ends up being as good as his dad or not. That's a name that people know and that they see, and that it recruits by itself. And then when you have him being as vocal as he is on social media, as far as recruiting his friends or people that he knows he's met at camps all over the country, as vocal as he's been to get people to come to Nebraska, it's going to do wonders for this program overall.
Yeah, and I've heard this too. It's like, I don't think anyone's expecting Keyshawn Jr. to be like a program-changing player, but what the after effect and like the backlash and players kind of following his friends, like Tristan's one of his best friends and high school teammates. So it's just like the effect, not necessarily his play. I mean, he's a 4-star, certainly talented, but I mean, it's not the fact of just his individual abilities. It's the effect and the impression he leaves on his peers. And like you said, I can't remember a recruit that ever did that. I mean, obviously, I don't think this team in recent history has recruited the son of a former NFL standout who happened to play for our current head coach back when he was in college. So, yeah, really cool connection that Mike Riley in Nebraska has made. Well, that's it for spring football this week. Again, spring game next Saturday, 1 o'clock, full coverage on KRNU, but we'll talk more about that later on in maybe next week. But we'll take a quick break now, and when we come back, Seth Olson, he is in studio with us. Connie Yori's resignation, that was the other big Husker bombshell this week. Her just stepping away from the program after 14 years, that announced Tuesday afternoon, just out of nowhere. So Seth Olson covered it pretty well in depth at the Daily Nebraskan, so we got him in studio to talk about it live, so we'll get his reaction, and we'll talk about the future of Nebraska women's basketball without their head coach as they begin a search next week. So all of that and more coming up next. Beyond the Arc, KRNU2.
This is your home for sports. You're listening to Beyond the Arc on KRNU2, streaming worldwide at krnu.unl.edu.
Our thanks again to Connor Happer for joining us for the second straight week to talk Husker spring football. He is our insider over there at Hawks Field. Going to try to get to practice this Saturday with the spring game coming up next week. I'd like to at least take in a little spring ball, but we shift gears now to kind of a not so a little bit of a darker subject, if you will, a bit of a sadder subject with Connie Yori stepping away after 14 years as Nebraska women's basketball head coach. Certainly a beloved figure and leader around campus, especially among student athletes. So a lot to unpack in this story, and to help us do that, we welcome in studio, back on Beyond the Arc for the first time in a while. He's the volleyball and women's basketball beat writer, one of them at the Daily Nebraskan, and he's been doing pretty superb work this year, so we thought we'd bring him on and get his take. Seth, thanks for joining us. How are you doing this morning?
Yeah, thanks for having me. Wish it was under better circumstances.
Yeah,
it's an awfully touchy subject.
Yeah, no doubt about it. So yeah, we're gonna be careful and try to tiptoe around this as best as we can. So let's just kind of start. So yeah, as I said, 14 years announced Tuesday. There was a public statement from iCourse. I think the Journal Star was the first to break it. Connie Yori resigns from her position as coach amid allegations of mistreatment of her players, including bullying and intimidation. The women's basketball program has been under investigation for the past 2 months, and a source told the Omaha World Herald this week that players weren't held to the same standard and treated unequally. Also, allegations from sources of mismanaging team chemistry and creating a negative environment. We'll break down these allegations a little bit more as we go along, but I know you've kind of already hinted at this, but this news broke Tuesday. I mean, what was your first thought? What was your initial reaction?
Honestly, after covering the team all year, I was initially shocked. I never saw this coming, but there were hints at this with all the injuries that something was going on behind the scenes, and in essence, the allegations made sense. Particularly the one that resonated with me was the overtraining of players and the general neglect of their well-being, because 8 of Nebraska's 13 players this year were injured for at least significant chunks of time. Mm-hmm. Many missed greater than 2 weeks. 2 people were shut down indefinitely, Rachel Terrio and Kendall Clark.
Yep.
And then Jessica Shepard had a stress fracture in her foot that was not even made public to the media, and she basically played the last 2 or 3 games of the regular season, mm-hmm. including the Big Ten tournament loss against Rutgers, on a broken foot with a stress fracture. She was in a boot for 2 weeks. She hadn't been practicing. But my guess, this is a bold statement, but I really believe that Connie Yori forced Jessica Shepard to play, even when Jessica Shepard may have said, "Hey, coach, I cannot play. I am too hurt to play." She may have used this as an overtraining, and I think bully isn't really the right word, but I definitely think there was an overall general neglect for some of these players.
Yeah, and the World Herald said it, I think just yesterday in an updated article about it, that injury woes were certainly one of the frustrations that were talked about. I mean, there was a report, an anonymous source from the athletic department said most of the team was interviewed, most of these players interviewed individually by the administration, and certainly they said it wasn't one central topic. It was a lot of different things going on, and certainly, yeah, the injuries, obviously the biggest story, the biggest Achilles heel for this team this year, and they said that was kind of part of this whole situation. That was part of the team's frustration and technically part of the team's problem with Coach Yori. So getting back to the allegations, Yori vehemently denied, quote, vehemently denied any mistreatment of players and insisted that her reasons for resigning were totally personal in reference to her current divorce proceedings with her husband, Kirk Helms. They also have an 11-year-old son. So she says, quote, "This has been a very challenging time for me and my family." So you said it like, there's obviously a lot of opinions, a lot of theories swirling around about this, but I don't think we'll ever truly know if this was really a personal issue because, obviously divorce, it's tough. It can take a toll on you. Obviously a very tough situation there, and you sympathize with that. But will we ever truly know if this resignation was based off of personal reasons or was it allegations? Will we ever really know the full story here?
I think a lot of times personal issues in our lives can tend to creep into our professional lives, and this was definitely a circumstance where this may have happened, but I think you're right. I don't think we'll ever truly know what happened behind the scenes. I mean, there were accusations of discrimination against Connie Yori too, so this is a wide range of topics, and the thing that was most interesting to me, or what I keep speculating about, what if this season had turned out a little differently? What if the Huskers had still made the NCAA tournament? They had the talent. They had the pieces this year.
They were close, yeah.
They just did not have all their stars on the court at the same time. You take Terrio along with Shepard and Romeo all on the court at the same time, all healthy and 100%, and this is easily an NCAA tournament team that can, make it a round or two and into the second weekend. And then all of a sudden, with that success, do these allegations ever come out? I think, not living up to the expectations of where this program could have been this year with the talent, I think also took a toll on the players and kind of led to these allegations coming out.
And certainly, probably added to the frustration because, if you're riding on success, I mean, everyone, if there's problems, usually everyone's able to kind of accept it because, I mean, you'll make sacrifices to have success. So, I think that was certainly part of it. And, that WNIT game, I was, you were there, I was there. It was just, they just had nobody. I think 7 or 8 players active. I mean, it was just crazy. I mean, Esther Ramacheri went down. When Esther Ramacheri went down with that injury in those last few minutes, I mean, by that point, UNI was kind of pulling away, had the slim lead. But at that point, Nebraska still had a chance. But when that happened, I mean, you're just thinking wow, who do they have left?
Look at their bench and everybody's crippled. I mean, Maddie Simon was even out and she was in a walking boot. So the injuries just really took their toll this year.
Yeah, certainly the injuries played a part in this whole story, no doubt about it. Seth Olson, Daily Nebraskan, live in studio with us on Beyond the Arc. So obviously the 2-month investigation going on within the athletic department, very limited number of people actually know the full story. And with that, rumors start to bleed through. Everyone kind of starts to form their own opinion. And it's fine to have it's fine for people to have opinions. It's kind of your job and my job to have opinions on the matter. But if you're a player on the current team, I mean, obviously, Doug Simon, Maddie Simon's dad, told the World Herald yesterday, we're both shocked by this. We're upset. There's reports that Natalie Romeo's really kind of distraught about this because Connie always spoke well of her play this year, setting that 3-point record. So if you're on this current team, how do you cut through all the noise and just not let this affect you mentally?
I think a lot of it's going to have to do with who comes in next year as the head coach and how they sort of begin this healing process with the players and how they can develop trust. Because despite some of these player allegations, obviously it wasn't every player on the team. So some of these players are going to be very hurt and upset by this. And they're going to wonder, how do I progress as a collegiate athlete now? How do I step up my game? This is what Coach Yori is probably one of the main reasons why they came to the program. A lot of it is the university, but the player-coach relationship for every school, for every team, is a significant factor. And I think losing that coach is going to cause some problems for a lot of these players progressing because Natalie Romeo really came out of the blue this year. She really had a terrific offseason where she was putting up shots left and right, and it translated in her setting the school record for threes. And then Maddie Simon really just evolved into the next point guard and really was casted into the spotlight when she was third on the depth chart behind Terrio and Clark this year, thinking she wasn't going to get playing time. All of a sudden, she's the face of the future. So you have these young players that really have to step up as leaders next year, and they have to do so without a coach. And I think it's going to be tough for them, but it's all going to be about how the new coach comes in and begins that healing process and can develop trust with them as quickly as possible and say, hey, we're going to be all right, and we're going to get back to winning ways, and we're going to help you progress in your game.
Yeah, Maddie Simon, it is an interesting story. A Lincoln native, the Pius graduate. Really a kind of a hometown hero, if you will. So, yeah, she's certainly a player that'll be exciting to watch. next year. Seth Olson from the Daily Nebraskan joining us in studio. So we've kind of talked about this. The biggest thing that stands out to me is just the amount of gray area. A source telling the World Herald there was quite a few players interviewed, so we don't really know who or if it was all of them. Quite a few players interviewed by athletic administrators concerning Yori's conduct and leadership. This same source went on to say that the struggles with ongoing injuries part of the complaints. Also, there was complaints of that Yori and some of her staff were overly critical and cynical with players. Obviously, no players commented on the matter. I don't think they're in a position where they can. Obviously, several former players, Lindsey Moore, the most vocal of them, who was a player. She was a practice player this season, and she played on both of Yori's Sweet 16 teams between 2009 and 2013. Lindsey Moore said, quote, that Yori is a damn good coach. She thinks Yori actually got softer as the years went on in her career, and she was quoted in saying, I don't understand how someone can take her constructive criticism to help them get better as such a negative thing, end quote. And to me, I mean, Lindsey Moore is not the first case of alumni coming back to work for Yori or coming back and supporting Yori. There's been several alumni and players like Moore who have always had good things to say about Yori, which is why this investigation seems very random and unexpected. Just after 14 years, all of a sudden, people come out and start venting and are interviewed and obviously voice their frustrations with the coach. So it's just really an odd deal when you got people pulling on two sides of the rope, because you have this anonymous source saying that, oh yeah, there was possible, bullying, intimidation, overall negative chemistry. She created a negative environment. On the other side of the rope, you have former players saying, like, what is this? People are wimps. Yori's a great coach. What's going on here? So it's really kind of just stressful, if you will, for this current team when you've got both ends pulling on the same rope saying this is bad, Yori's the right coach, and then people saying, she had to go. Really a confusing issue right now.
Yeah, and former Husker All-American Kelsey Griffin, who's actually in Australia right now training for their trying to make the women's national team. She was probably the most storied athlete under Yori's tenure, and she came to her defense too. So a lot of these athletes are coming to her defense, and I don't blame those athletes.
Oh, no, yeah.
I just think, like you said, there's an overall general gray area. And what I think is most interesting about all this is how this has been a 2-month-long investigation. So we're talking since at least early February when this investigation started, when they had administrators at the practices and they were surrounding the program and trying to figure out what's really going on here when these allegations started surfacing. So this is something, the team chemistry was clearly affected even mid-season, and there was a lot of, I would say, rift and a lot of, tension within the team. And that may have also led to some of their downfall down the stretch because, the women's basketball team won 6 games after they lost the first 3 to open up the Big Ten. They really looked like they were on track and they're going to get turned around. Then February rolls around, and they just seem to fall off a cliff. And it's like, what happened?
Right.
But with this investigation, I saw an interesting comment the other day. The Journal-Star clearly had this in their back pocket all along. They had insider information. But somebody said, you report the news, you don't make the news. And, this obviously the resignation came out of nowhere, but the resignation stemmed from all this negative stuff. In a sense, Yori got fired, for lack of a better word, because resign is not the correct term to put it into, but the Journal-Star really had this in their back pocket all along, and it was a matter of when they were going to come out with it. And it just seems a very awkward time to come with it. And now the Huskers are really asking questions. Where do we turn next to for our program, and who do we hire as a head coach?
Well, yeah, and then Yori just it was announced yesterday that she's going to get a $1.2 million lump settlement in 2 separate payments, one in April, then ending in January of 2017, which is typically a case with a coach that's been fired. The university is still paying off that settlement to Bo Pelini. They paid one to Doc Sadler, who's the former men's coach who was fired. So, yeah, just the resignation in cases like this Yori thing, the word resigned, it's more formal and it's, it's cleaner and it's more peaceful, where the coach can just back away peacefully, get the settlement, and, leave quietly without, a messy firing. Like, let's face it, Bo Pelini, that was kind of a messy situation as far as the mixed reactions go. So, yeah, when a coach is given the opportunity to step aside peacefully, kind of take the money and run, if you will, it's, obviously I don't think Yori said she vehemently denies any of this going on. She said this was the right decision for her moving forward for her family. So she insists this was personal and nothing with these misconduct, mistreatment allegations. So again, that just kind of goes back to what we were saying. We may never know what the true story was. But yeah, Connie Yori resigning after 14 years as coach. So I guess my last question for you, Seth, is with Yori out of the program, how does this affect recruiting going forward? A lot of times in these types of deals in college hoops, you see a lot of transfers particularly, and maybe not as effective as recruiting as you had. And Nebraska football is a good example to follow as far as awkward transitions go with a new coach. Nebraska went 5-7 under Mike Riley's first year. Seems like now in year 2, things are maybe clicking along a little better. We'll see more about that in fall. But with new coaches, it can be difficult, and certainly Yori had a close relationship with a lot of players like Jess Shepard, like Natalie Romeo, like Allie Havers, a lot of these players that just built a strong relationship with her, and the alumni connection she had, and obviously the recruiting influence she had, bringing in Jess Shepard, possibly the best recruit ever. Just where does this program go as far as recruiting now in the future? It's kind of unclear at this point, isn't it?
Yeah, I think a lot of it's going to have to do with whoever the Huskers bring in as their next coach, and something smart to do would be to bring in a coach with some sort of Husker ties. Obviously, Amy Williams of USD, a former Husker player, has been mentioned. But for recruiting in the future, if you don't have someone with Husker ties, it's going to be sort of as if you're establishing an entire new culture and a new brand. And without Yori in the picture, obviously the commits for next year have been left, oh man, what do I do now? Can you imagine? You're a high school recruit.
Right.
You had committed to this program, and all of a sudden your soon-to-be coach resigns, quote unquote, for lack of a better word.
Right.
What do you do? Obviously, you have to be pretty distraught. You think, man, did I make the right decision? Should I go to this school? Do I want to be a part of a culture that's, I wouldn't say necessarily in rebuilding mode, but is going through a rough, very tense time? Do I play at a different school? But
yeah,
a lot of these
transition
athletes,
period. Yeah.
A lot of these athletes have already said they're still coming to Nebraska. So that's a really good sign, at least for this next class. But recruiting for the following class is going to be really difficult, saying we don't even have a coach right now, but we want you to come be a part of our program. So it's going to, whoever takes the job is going to have a real tall task of just trying to recruit and say, make those recruits believe in what they're doing, really being a coach who hasn't, for a university who hasn't seen a coaching change in this program for, nearly 2 decades.
Right.
That's a long time.
Yeah, she's been the coach since 2002 after about 6 years as the head coach of Creighton. And then, talking about recruiting and just overall players staying or going, Mark Shepard said, who's the father of Jess Shepard, he said his daughter was specifically asked if she was considering transferring from the program after the season. And Mark told the World Herald her answer was, as long as Coach Yori is here, I'll be here. And he said Jess was very clear about that. But he also said, Jess is very committed to this program. She's very committed to playing here. She is the in-state native, I should say, originally coming out of Fremont and then playing at Lincoln Southeast. So I would say that's the biggest question right now, because we all know that Jess Shepard and Coach Yori had that relationship dating back to before even Shepard played high school basketball. Like, it was like 8th grade that Shepard said, I'm going to go play at Nebraska, and it turned out to work out that way. And obviously Jess Shepard, when healthy, had a pretty good success with this program and took it up a notch. So we'll see if any transfers come out of this. I mean, I certainly wouldn't be surprised to see 1 or 2. It's just kind of nature's way when we see these coaching changes. And you mentioned it, Nebraska will begin the search on Wednesday, and one name that has come up, you said it, Amy Williams from the University of South Dakota, who has some local ties. She's been the head coach for South Dakota since the late 1990s, apparently, and she is a former Nebraska player. Amy Williams walked on at NU in the late 90s and then recently led the Coyotes to a WNIT championship. Her parents and her husband, they didn't comment, but her sister, who is a Minnesota State women's basketball coach, she said that Williams has been in a whirlwind since they won the WNIT title, and she didn't know what level of interest Williams might have in a Nebraska job, but we do know that the two have been in contact. Another one with ties to the area is Colorado State's Ryan Williams, who preceded Amy Williams at USD and recruited all of the seniors who form the core of South Dakota's WNIT title team. Williams has coached 10 years at Wayne State. He's compiled a 76-47 record in 4 years at South Dakota, and he coached 4 years at Colorado State. And CSU finished 31-2 on the year, won the Mountain West title, and advanced to the first round of the NCAA tournament. So there you have two coaches with local ties who have had success at smaller schools in this region. So yeah, the search begins Wednesday. So we'll see what comes of this. But Seth, unfortunately, we're all out of time. This was a really good discussion. I appreciate you coming to join us, and we'll see where this thing goes in the future. Should be an interesting coaching search as we go through the offseason.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah, Seth Olson from the Daily Nebraskan women's basketball beat writer. I'm going to post his article reacting to this news. We'll post that on our Facebook page, and you can go read that and enjoy it for yourself. And there's also a timeline that he and Brett Nierengarten from the DN put together, a timeline of just kind of Yori's life as a coach, as a Creighton player, a standout player, and then leading up to Tuesday and her resignation. We'll take a quick break. When we come back, Zach and I will recap. What am I trying to say? We'll cap off the show. We'll wrap things up with a little bit of college basketball discussion and some fun facts, a come on man moment, what happened on this day in sports history, and we'll get you set for what you need to watch this weekend. So get the TV guide, get your remote ready. Few good things going on this weekend you won't want to miss. We'll discuss it next. Beyond the Arc, KRNU2.
From Anderson Hall on UNL campus in downtown Lincoln, Nebraska, this is Beyond the Arc on KRNU2, streaming live at krnu.unl.edu.
Big thanks to Seth Olson from the Daily Nebraskan. It was a good discussion. I enjoyed that. It kind of a tricky situation, kind of a tricky topic to unfold and to unravel, but I think Seth did a reasonable job of unfolding that for us and some interesting opinions and theories on just this whole thing. So, Zach, I didn't really get your reaction to that. So before we kind of shift gears, got a couple of college basketball topics now that it's the end of the year. We'll touch on that championship again, but I guess what was your overall analysis of this Connie Yori resignation?
You know, I agree with what Seth said in that, and what you touched on as well is that we'll never know.
Yeah.
We will never know what happened, whether or not, or whether it did have to do with forcing Jess Shepard to play late in the season, or a million other ideas that people have thrown on the board. So we're never gonna fully understand what happened late in this season, or what kind of effect it will have on this program overall. But the only thing that this program can do now is heal, and that starts with bringing in a new coach, a new face, to help out the healing process. And hopefully these players will stay here. Hopefully these new recruits stay true to Nebraska and still come here. But this is going to be a little bit of a healing process that's needed for Nebraska, and it will probably take a year or two to finally get back to where they were.
Yeah, certainly. No doubt. Amy Williams, who coached South Dakota to a WNIT title this year, a former player in the late 90s. She's been the coach there about the past 5 or 6 years. She took over for Ryan Williams, who's now at Colorado State. Two people that have ties to the local area. Ryan used to be the coach at Wayne State, and obviously Amy was a player at NU and has had pretty good success at USD. So obviously a couple of favorites, but again, we don't really know where that's going to go either. Those are just a couple of names, as it always is with the coaching search, as was the case last December when Bo Pelini got fired. Obviously, names get strewn around everywhere, and then sometimes your athletic director pulls one out of left field, like Mike Riley from Corvallis, and really shocks all of you. So we'll see what direction Nebraska decides to go with that, replacing Connie Yori. But going back to that championship game.
3 seconds to go across the timeline. 2 seconds to go. Jenkins, three, right wing to win it. He made it. He made the three from the right wing at the buzzer. Cats win it all. Cats win it all. Cats win it all. 31 years later, Villanova is the king of college basketball once again.
Now, Deadspin said that was student radio, but there was a bunch of people that tweeted at him saying, no, that's not student radio, and I couldn't find names of the broadcasters anywhere, but that's Villanova radio on the call. Great call. So going back to that game, Zach, where does this stack up in NCAA tournament championship history? We touched on this early in the show, or where does this rank among your favorite championship moments in any major sport?
As far as college basketball, I think it's number one for me. I think that it's a great moment for college basketball and a great moment for Villanova, especially. I mean that last minute, one of the best last minutes you'll ever see. It brings back memories of the 2010 national title game. As what if Gordon Hayward's shot would have gone in? That shot, the half quarter to beat Duke. In 2010, what if that shot would have gone in? It would have been a half quarter at the buzzer for the win. Would have beaten this for sure. But he just rimmed it out, and fortunately for neutral fans like myself, Chris Jenkins made that shot, and it's tough. It's honestly kind of tough for North Carolina, especially because that very well might be Roy Williams' last shot at the Final Four, especially with North Carolina having so many seniors that are leaving and them facing allegations where it may be trouble to recruit for them for a few years. So. Tough for them, but hats off to Villanova. They had their seniors, Oshefu, Ryan Archidiakono, and then great players like Josh Hart and Chris Jenkins who made that shot. Jalen Brunson, just a great season for Villanova as a whole. And how about it for the new Big East? They're 3 years old, and they finally get their first representative in the Final Four as the new Big East, and that first rep wins it all. So that's huge for that conference overall. It's just the new 10, and now there's rumors of them expanding. Light rumors of the Big East expanding. Which would involve Wichita State joining the conference and possibly Gonzaga. I know they're not even close to. I know they're not even close to East. That's just a light rumor that's been thrown around. But a great championship moment for sure. But there's a lot of rumors going around as far as the future of Jay Wright. So. As far as whether or not he will stay at Villanova, there's reports that he may be going to the Phoenix Suns this offseason, which,
sweet.
What a story that would be. But he's from Philly. He lived in Philadelphia for a very long time. He still has a daughter in high school in Philadelphia. It doesn't really seem like Jay Wright, a move to the NBA is very likely at this point. But, an interesting storyline. But, Tommy, I wanted to ask you about something.
Yes.
I don't know if you saw Jay Wright's reaction.
I'm glad you brought that up. Maybe we'll post a picture on the Facebook page.
Unbelievable. I love it. I love it.
Stone cold. Oh, my gosh.
It reminds me of, I'm not sure if in 2012 when Christian Watford made that three-pointer for Indiana to beat number 1 Kentucky with Anthony Davis on that team, Tom Crean had a very similar reaction, just blank face, just turned to go shake Calipari's hand. It was the same while the students are rushing the floor and everyone's going nuts. He's not doing anything.
You are a sad, strange little man.
It was the same exact reaction by Jay Wright, and then in the interview he was talking about how I thought they were going to add time on the clock, so he was thinking about the next play. I mean, from watching that game for the naked eye, there's no way they were going to add time. That ball's midway through or halfway to the hoop when the buzzer sounds. There's just no way they're going to add time. So
right.
I don't know. I don't know if it's just his style, but that's that style of thinking ahead, thinking to the next play, staying focused and staying lasered or wired into the ultimate goal. That's what got him there, and so I don't mind his reaction at all to winning the national title.
Oh yeah, no, I don't hold it against him or criticize him, but yeah, it's certainly it's interesting. You'd expect guys to be going crazy, and obviously Roy Williams was pretty stone cold. He just lost the championship, but yeah. Not expected exactly, but what a championship game. And CBS Sports actually ranked the top 10 March Madness games of this year, and they said the best national championship game ever to what some believe. What we can all agree on, it's top 3 at the absolute worst. If you want to say that 83 or 85 was better, but CBS Sports says that's number 1 because this one not only ended on a buzzer beater, also had Marcus Page's unbelievable game-tying 3 right before that, just that crazy one-handed, one-legged shot from about maybe 38 feet out. So and then that corner shot, I believe Page made that one as well. That put UNC within 1 with like a minute to go. So and then Villanova missed a couple free throws late, and the game was tied back and forth and. Oh, my goodness, what a moment. That's why I love sports. I got up and I just hooped and hollered when that shot went in. I did not have a horse in the race. But for college basketball, for like the criticisms and the struggles that they have been facing with, they needed that. They needed a moment like that.
And this NCAA tournament broke the record for the most buzzer beaters in a tournament ever. I think they finished with 4. So that's more buzzer beaters than ever in any other tournament. So that's huge for the college basketball as well, especially with a lot of the criticism they're getting as far as the tournament the last few years. But as far as where it ranks, you have to consider the 83 national title game. I think that, NC State, especially the circumstances they were in, where they were playing a Houston team that was, everyone said they were going to get killed.
Yep.
Houston was supposed to. That's Hakeem Olajuwon, that's Clyde Drexler on that team, and
Crazy.
Houston had been killing everybody all year. They're over 30 wins, and you're playing an NC State team that would be the equivalent to about a 7 or 8 seed, going in to play the number 1 team in the country, and everyone thinks that you're going to get killed, and then you beat them on a buzzer beater. So this is another example. It was a similar situation as this, except it was a huge upset, and it was still a buzzer beater. So,
right.
And capping off an incredible run that dated back through their conference tournament, because at the beginning of the ACC tournament for NC State, they were not even in, and they had to win that whole tournament just to get into the tournament, and then they won the whole thing from there, beating Houston along the way, beating Virginia, and on the way there they Ralph Sampson, 7'4", beat him. Just a incredible run that they had through that tournament to cap off the 83 title.
Yeah, I think you could make the argument that the 83 Wolfpack was probably maybe the most unprecedented champion as far as just, underdog status goes.
85 Villanova as well.
Yeah.
Right up there, yep.
Yo, absolutely. And but as far as just pure entertainment and drama and just heart stoppage, this year's championship certainly up there. Yeah, the buzzer beaters you mentioned, Wisconsin, Xavier, who could forget that? UNI, Texas, that put a big old smile on my face. That was incredible. And I know I'm probably leaving one out. I know Arkansas Little Rock hit a shot late, not at the buzzer, but hit that shot late to put themselves ahead of Purdue in overtime. And then, Villanova, UNC. And the only other game that, if I remember watching, that I could even compare that to was KU Memphis from 2008. But I had only been following college hoops. I was only in 7th grade at the time. And I'd only been following college basketball about 2-3 years, and I was 13 years old. I knew a lot less then than I do now. So I feel like this one will remain in my memory longer. So I'm going to go ahead and say that was the best college basketball championship ever. Now, as far as championships overall, man, 08 Giants, Patriots, or Patriots, Seahawks. Those two championship moments. Maybe it's my football bias kicking in. And then watching 05 Texas, USC. That was one of the first full college football games I ever watched.
That's a great one.
Or Auburn, Florida State was a thriller from a couple of years ago. Or you could go conference titles. We've seen, a lot of exciting SEC title games or Big 12 title games in the past few years. So yeah, but this one definitely ranks, if you're talking all conference and national championships in all major sports, this one ranks in the top 10, maybe top 5.
Yeah, no, for sure. And the one that I just thought of that I wanted to add to that was the I think it was the 2012 World Series, maybe 2013. It was the Cardinals and the Rangers just a few years ago, and it was the Cardinals were in Game 6 down to their last strike.
Yes.
David Freese had a triple to tie it.
Yeah.
And then the Rangers came back and they scored 2 in the 12th, and then so the Cardinals were down by 2 again, and then they rallied all the way back to tie it again, and then the next inning David Freese had a walk-off to send it to Game 7 where the Cardinals won. So the Cardinals were, I think, down to their last strike on 2 separate occasions in the 9th, and then they were down to their last out, I think, again in the 12th. So just a crazy game right there, and then they ended up winning the World Series. So that was another really good championship moment thinking of right there.
Alex Gordon being 90 feet away just a couple of years ago in Game 7. What a moment that was. Madison Bumgarner, what a duel that was between the Royals lineup and the Giants pitcher. My goodness. So, I could talk about that all day, but we got to get wrapping up this. We got to wrap up the show. We're going to go over time, but that's okay. So let's get to, as tradition, let's get to a couple of things here.
Time now for Fun Facts.
This is fun, right? We're having fun.
The part of the show where the Beyond the Arc crew shares with you 3 fun sports facts that you may not have ever known before.
Ooh, weird.
Now, here's Fun Facts.
Well, if you're a Dolphins fan, you may have heard about this. The Dolphins Stadium reportedly underwent their 7th name change in 29 years. According to the Miami New Times, the stadium's latest moniker will be New Miami Stadium. Really rolls off the tongue, right? Since 1987, the Dolphins have changed the stadium's name 7 times. Joe Robbie Stadium from 87 to 96. Pro Player Park had a 1-year run in 96. Pro Player Stadium from 96 to 2005. Dolphin Stadium, which I think is fine, 2006 to 2009. Landshark Stadium from 2009 to 2010. And then just recently, Sun Life Stadium, where Nebraska, didn't Nebraska and Miami play?
They did.
Yeah,
Yep.
There we go. Sun Life Stadium from 2010 to 2016, and Dolphin Stadium naming rights, a tradition like no other, according to Fox Sports. It'll be new Miami Stadium. That does have a nice ring to it, but the 7th name change for the Dolphins' home stadium in 29 years.
Time now for the part of the show you've all been waiting for. It's the
Come on, man!
Moment of the Week, where Tommy, Kellen, and Reed point out the most ridiculous thing that happened in sports over the last week. Seriously, it's so ridiculous, it'll make you say,
Come on, man!
Well, obviously, Kellen and Reed couldn't be with us today, but Zach, I know you pulled a come on man moment out late, so fire away.
Okay, so I got on Wednesday during the Masters par 3 contest this week. It was Webb Simpson was playing with Bubba Watson in a twosome group, and Webb Simpson hit a hole in one. I'm not quite sure which hole it was on, but he hit a hole in one in it and was celebrating with everybody that was around him. And he goes to hug Bubba Watson, and Bubba Watson does not hug him back. I have a little video right here, and as you can see, Webb Simpson goes to hug him, and Bubba Watson just does not want any of it. And he just I don't know what was his problem on this, but I mean he was there. I saw a thing the other day on Bubba Watson, but it was something about how he is the least liked person on the PGA Tour, voted by the players.
Ooh.
So I mean I don't know what it is about his attitude or whatever, but he doesn't want to celebrate in a part of the tournament that just doesn't matter. It's supposed to be fun. It's the par 3 tournament. So I mean, I don't really like Bubba Watson personally. I didn't like what he did right there. So just kind of a come on man moment of the week for me.
My moment stems from North Carolina, and no, it doesn't have to do with their scandal. After the championship game, North Carolina fan Michael Klein started a petition on change.org asking to have Villanova's win in the NCAA championship overturned. Really? I mean, for poor officiating. And Klein's petition, which at last check had 627 signatures, states that he wants a complete investigation into the officials. This game was poorly officiated from tip-off to the end. It was a one-sided game all the way through. Blah, 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 blah. I mean, come on. I mean, why? I mean, we can whine and cry about bad officiating all day. I wish I had a whining button of some sort to play, but I mean, why complain about that? I mean, I watched most of that game. I didn't have an issue with the officiating from a neutral, objective standpoint. I mean, nothing more unusual than college hoops officiating in general, right? I mean, am I crazy? I thought this game was pretty fairly officiated.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, there were maybe a few points for North Carolina, especially. I mean, he has a point. There were a few tight calls, especially towards the North Carolina side, as far as, I mean, a few fouls that weren't called. But Villanova did get a few helpful calls. I think there was a travel at some point that wasn't called. That could have been a turnover, especially I think that was in the last 3 minutes or so. But I think that starting a petition to overturn the national title result is a little bit extreme, especially when he doesn't even have 1,000 signatures and it's already been over a week or almost a week. So
yeah, about 4 or 5 days.
About 4 or 5 days. So I mean, I just don't think that it has any relevancy to even talk about, honestly.
Yeah. The officials called fouls against UNC that should have not been called, and never called Villanova for the fouls they committed.
Everyone in this room is now dumber for having listened to it.
So the official, I mean, yeah, you said it. There's probably a few, bad calls or no calls, but they called the fact of the matter is they called it both ways. I thought they got it right in that final couple of minutes when the game was on the line. I thought they officiated and handled it well. So yeah, nothing out of the ordinary. Yeah, there's always going to be, college basketball officiating. Not an easy task to do. But, that's no excuse. You got to officiate the game fairly. So you're always going to have a few no calls. But as long as they're calling it consistently and calling it both ways, I don't think I have any complaints. And the officiating was pretty widely panned during the game through the officials. Though the officials weren't involved in the biggest play of the game when Chris Jenkins hit the game-winning three-pointer to break a 74-point tie. And just for fun, UNC radio.
Arcidiacono to a trailing Jenkins for the championship. He hits it at the buzzer.
I like how that confetti gunshot sound was in all of the in all of the radio calls. Kevin Kugler's on Westwood 1. I would have played it, but the fireworks sound, it must have been right behind him in mid-court down there. It just kind of drowned him out, unfortunately, as the buzzer sounded. So, but still a good call from Kugler. I had a chance to listen to some of that. A co-JMC alum, certainly a proud alum of this college, and we're proud to say that he went to this college and walked these very studios, so to speak. So again, coming up this weekend, what to watch for: Masters today at noon. Jordan Spieth with the 2-stroke lead at 6 under. And then Saturday at 2, Sunday at 1. Nebraska baseball tonight at 6:30. And Zach Penrice informs me that BTN Plus, BTN Student U, has coverage Friday and Sunday. And then you could turn to NET on Saturday for full coverage of Nebraska and Northwestern. First pitch at 6:30. And Zach, is there any NBA game or something that I'm missing this weekend?
The Warriors at the Spurs is on Sunday night, which is definitely the NBA game of the week to watch this weekend.
I thought it was Sunday or Monday. I thought it was Monday for some reason. But yeah, that is the big one coming up. That is Sunday, April 9th. And then Cleveland at Chicago. That's kind of an interesting one. And then the Thunder at, what is that? The Clippers, is that? Let's see, the Thunder at, I am having trouble. Oh, Sacramento. Yeah, not too intriguing of a matchup, just looking at some of the games. And then Boston at Atlanta as well. And then Major League Baseball, Yankees and Tigers, a 3-game series. Phillies and Mets. Indians, White Sox, nothing too major. I think St. Louis, Atlanta, that has a chance to be interesting. And then the Twins and Kansas City, a couple of Midwest teams doing battle, Houston and Milwaukee as well. And then the Dodgers and Giants, the California in-state series that starts tonight. So yeah, a few good series going on. Yankees 2-1. They got the series win over the Rangers. Your Reds are 3-0, off to a good start. They got a series with Pittsburgh this weekend.
Yeah, now that's going to be a tough one, especially. I mean, Pittsburgh's got Liriano on the hill tonight. I mean, the Reds they weren't the best. They weren't by or even close to a very good team last year, but they were also the last undefeated team in baseball last year at 9-0. So
yeah,
curious to see if they can. They usually start hot. I mean, they are pretty good at starting hot. And playing their first 6 in Cincinnati will obviously help.
It's a bold strategy, Cotton. Let's see if it pays off for them.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see where it goes. The Yankees, did pretty well. I thought starting pitching did a good job. I thought the bullpen did well. And Sterling Castro's been just smacking the ball. 7 RBIs, I think 3 home runs in that first series. He had 2 of them yesterday. Torreira hit a couple homers. Happy with how the Yankees started off, and to get a revenge series win over the Astros, who knocked us out of the wild card last year, certainly felt good. Well, that's going to do it for our show this morning. My thanks to Zach, Seth Olson, Connor Happer for all of their work. A very packed show, and we ended up going over time, but no problem. We had a lot of things to cover. Spring game coming up next week. Unsure about a show with a busy week for all of us in preparation for that. Me and Zach will be helping with a full day of coverage on KRNU and KRNU2. You can check our Facebook and Twitter pages for that. Facebook.com, search Beyond the Arc, and on Twitter at Beyond_Arc. And you find this podcast and podcasts of shows past on our YouTube page. Go to youtube.com and search Beyond the Arc, and be sure to subscribe. We're up to 3 subscribers, so I'm happy for the support and so happy that any of you could take the time to listen. If you missed part of the show today or want to hear some part again, I highly recommend the Connie Yori discussion with us and Seth. That was it was a fun discussion. It was a intellectual discussion when it's a tough topic to talk about. So lots to unfold today. Glad we could get to all these topics. For Zach Penrice, I'm Tommy Rezach. Again, unsure when our next show will be, but we'll try to do one again Friday morning. That's kind of be our go-to time for the remainder of the semester. So just follow us on social media, Facebook and Twitter, for all the latest on show times and when will we be on again. I would say probably for sure we'll do a spring game recap in 2 weeks, but stay tuned for a show next week. And in the meantime, just sit back and listen to the podcast on youtube.com. Thanks for listening. Have a great day, everybody, and go Big Red.